Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for tuning in from wherever you are and however you're tuning in. We're glad to have you with us today. I am Caleb Talley, and I am a Startup Junkie. I'm joined by my co-hosts Jeff Amerine and Victoria Dickerson. How are y'all today?
Doing good.
Anticipating college football.
Was it 2 weeks?
Yeah, and by the time this airs, it will already be on.
Exactly.
And we will have beaten the fire out of Cincinnati.
We'll probably be, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0.
That's what I'm thinking.
By the time, yeah.
Optimism prevails.
And we are joined today, glad to be joined today, by Brad Gentry. He is with CEO of Gentry Professional Services, formerly Odyssey Consulting, where he was COO. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us, Brad, what is Gentry Professional Services?
Well, we're an elite engineering consulting company, and we connect people who have very specialized skill sets with clients that need their particular expertise. And sometimes that means that it's because this individual might be very highly educated in a particular field, and other times it can mean that they have a domain knowledge that's just uncommon. And that often manifests itself as someone who's retiring, and they are taking with them when they leave the institutional knowledge that they've acquired over 30-something years of working at that company. And our model, I think, is unique because we, prior to operation, we've been told by several companies that they thought their only options were, I can make this person a 1099 independent contractor if I want to bring them back, or, and by the way, that works for some, but some people are a little uncomfortable with it. They're not used to withholding their own taxes and things. And then their other option, they thought, was we can offer a retention package. So we'll just give you a big bag of cash if you stay around another year. But at that point in their life, in their career, it's not always about the money anymore. It's about the flexibility. It's about, can I work on what I want to work on, when I want to work, and spend time with my family in a work arrangement that coming back to a company might not allow. And
it canvasses a variety of hardware, software, skills, data analytics, and are most of your clients, are they is it a B2G, a business to government type of play, or is some large airframers and mill aero type of folks as well?
Yes, it's mainly B2B with defense contracting companies, aerospace and defense companies. Gotcha. We found that the aerospace and defense industry is kind of hit with a 1-2-3 punch with the labor shortage, and that is because that not just the silver tsunami that we saw coming, all the baby boomers are retiring at roughly the same time, but also in the 90s the defense budget was dropped significantly. So a lot of the A&D companies just went years without their normal hiring. So the way that manifests itself today is when someone retires, they may have someone who is 2 or 3 steps behind them in experience, but not really 1 step behind them in experience. So that generational gap has kind of followed as people have progressed through their careers. And then the third punch to them is of course COVID, the great resignation,
Sure.
the buzzwords, but they were struggling with this before that, and this just made it a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. It seems like you're approaching probably the perfect storm in regards to COVID, the Great Resignation, just the general issues we've had around the labor market, and then you touched on, you mentioned the silver tsunami. So like, what are you anticipating that looking like when that all kind of coalesces together?
Well, I think that a lot of companies, particularly in that sector that I mentioned, are facing additional challenges that just didn't exist 20 years ago. Sure. 20, 30 years ago, we didn't refer to people as data scientists. That dealing with big data, it wasn't, it didn't really exist. And now, if you have a Boeing or a Lockheed, they're not just competing with themselves anymore. They're competing with the Amazons and the Apples.
Sure.
And anyone who has a need for a data scientist, data analysts dealing with big data, and oh, by the way, a lot of those companies will allow remote work.
Yeah.
Whereas a defense company often has to have their work in a classified area.
Sure.
So remote is not as much of an option.
Sure. An interesting thing I saw, this might have been Twitter or LinkedIn posting, but there was a senior engineer, and I think it was probably a senior software engineer, probably full stack developer. And for the sake of an exercise, he went out and said that he was available, and he got 7 offers that ranged between $350,000 and $800,000 a year. And I'm not sure he took any of them, right? But you think about that, that's sort of like CEO level pay of a mid-sized or large company.
Yeah.
And it's characteristic. I'll give you one other example, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on both of those. So whereas in anything defense related, agency related, you have to work in a SCIF. You can't really work remote. You're not going to build all the trappings that you need. Most people can't keep top secret information at their personal residence. They're mere mortals.
Right.
So, I signed something that said I'd be in jail for 77 years if I ever talked about any of that stuff that I was cleared for back in the 80s. So there's none of that. But they're competing then against having to deal with that overhead that goes with working on government or government-related programs versus I can make a ton of money and work for a commercial company that doesn't do any defense work, and I can sit anywhere I want.
Right.
So with that, and I mean, just to add to kind of your story, how do you weave your way through that on the behalf of these large companies? How do you convince them to stay with you?
Well, the convincing the companies or convincing the employees, because
the employees. I mean, I think I'm confident that the companies you work with value what you do and your track record and all that, but taking into consideration this war on talent, how do you make it compelling for them so that they continue to stay in the fight and do the stuff you need them to do?
It is very often them coming to us in reality, especially if you're dealing with retirees. About 3/4 of our staff are retirees, and what they find is they really want to get re-engaged.
Gotcha.
I have one guy who had 6 weeks of vacation banked at his previous company, and said not coming back, not interested in coming back. By the time he got through the 6th week, he was ready to come back, and more importantly, his spouse was ready for him to come back.
Absolutely. Got to get that guy out of the house, right?
Yeah. So it really is about them wanting to contribute more. Everybody has a story, and this is a lot of our team members really see this as defining or redefining their professional legacy. Mm-hmm. We have some people that are brought on for short-term assignments where they might be reviewing a design, but also longer-term assignments where they're training their replacement. Mm-hmm. Somebody left and it was a little premature mm-hmm. in the manager's perspective, because John Doe, he's my critical person, mm-hmm. and I knew retirement was on the horizon, but I didn't really prepare mm-hmm. for it. I didn't have a knowledge transfer plan in place. I didn't have a replacement for him, and they will come back and be welcomed with open arms. Mm-hmm. It is usually something that is very well received on both sides.
No, that's great. I'm gonna take you a little bit off course here, and you can tell me how comfortable you are with this. So we just had this kind of milestone CHIPS Act that's signed, because there's obvious national security considerations around making sure that we've got supply chain for semiconductors and a whole bunch of related stuff, that we're completely reliant for certain categories of things on Taiwan, and our buddies in Beijing could do anything at any point to make that really bad for the rest of the world. So with the CHIPS Act, and with what you do, given that defense and agencies are really relying on some of these supply chains, how do you see all that sorting out? I mean, with your crystal ball, you're closer to it than a lot of us. What do you think? How do you think that's going to play out?
I think that is a wonderful thing that has been passed. Bipartisan support, and right now, depending on the application, there are some designs that can only be fabricated within the United States by
For
the
kind of
government's
obvious
rule,
reasons,
for
right?
obvious reasons,
Yeah.
the sensitivity of it. And there are a very limited number, count on one hand, the number of trusted fabs in the U.S. So the fact that the government will be helping to bolster that capability with U.S. industry is a great thing, I believe, that will help us not only be competitive with foreign entities, but also help our national defense.
Sure.
Be able to stand on its
Sure.
own.
That's great. It's some of this stuff is, I think that we've seen the fragility of having a fast cycle global supply chain, and it's not that it's bad, because there's efficiencies that can come from it, but we've got to have decentralization in our own capabilities as well. Just
Right.
because you can't count on a rules-based or a law-based system in some of these areas where you've got leadership that in an arbitrary and capricious way can just decide because they feel like they've got a 5,000-year dynasty to invade their neighbors.
Right. Yes.
So,
As
anyway.
you're,
Sorry to take you down that
That's
path,
okay.
but I think it's relevant given the
yeah.
space that you play in.
It is, and my team and I had a conversation about it just the other day.
I kind of figured. I kind of figured.
I'm curious too, as you look with your crystal ball to kind of and those roles that you will be filling in the future. What role do you think technology plays in supplementing? When I think about kind of the silver tsunami and some of those roles that are going to be left vacant, do you see technology playing a role in replacing some of those positions to where an individual, I know we think about automation in terms of like manufacturing and other things, but are there certain technological advancements that you think might be applied to some of those roles that might help
Like
fill
no
the
code
gap?
and low code,
Yeah.
for example, so that you can have an analyst rather than full stack engineer.
I think that the roles are, whenever we talk about things like that, it's usually spun with a negative connotation of people losing jobs, and I don't quite see it that way. I see the jobs themselves as evolving.
Yeah.
And the low code, no code is a good example of that. We have a group within our team that does software development that is really on the cutting edge of big data and Kubernetes and AWS, and it's a different role than it has been in the past, and I think it will continue to do so.
What would you say is your process when filling these very unique roles within companies to matching the employee to the organization, because it is a very unique skill set? And so what is your process for filling that role?
As we've grown, most of it has been, quite honestly, most of it has been done for us, where the company will call us and say, I need this person. I know exactly who I need because there are only 5 people in the country that can do this. But if it is a case where we don't have a relationship with that person previously, we do go through a vetting process, not just checking references, but we also go through a behavioral assessment even, because somebody can be the smartest person in the room, but if they can't work well with others, then it's not going to be a good fit. So we do several things like that to try and assess not only their knowledge and skills, but also how well they can interact with the team that they're going to be supporting.
Keep up to date on the latest news in economic development with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission's Arkansas Inc. newsletter. Each month, get the Arkansas Inc. newsletter, which spotlights the latest project wins and developments throughout the state, delivered to your email. The newsletter features major project announcements, company expansions and relocations, news articles, rankings, and more that highlight why Arkansas is a great state to do business. The newsletter is a snapshot of what AEDC has been working on and what we are following. The quarterly Tech Trends newsletter highlights the latest news in Arkansas's growing tech sector. You can learn about new Arkansas tech companies, computer science and cybersecurity initiatives, funding and venture capital announcements, and even more. AEDC offers 4 quarterly newsletters: the Food and Beverage Industry Digest, Aerospace and Defense Beacon, Timber Trends, and Tech Trends. To learn more or sign up for a newsletter, visit arkansasedc.com/news.
And as you approach re-engaging retirees, as you mentioned before, do you filter by those that have a spouse at home, or maybe a boat that they have to like continue pumping money into? Or
No, it's kind of cliche, but the group that we have, we think of as family, and I know you've probably got every company that comes on this podcast that says that. But I think one of the best investments we ever made was to say, okay, we are going to have a family dinner once a month with all of our employees. And my wife and I live in Arkansas. A bulk of our employees are in Maryland. We've got others in Colorado. And we will go, prior to COVID slowed down a lot of this, that we're just getting back into the rhythm of it. But we would have these family dinners. We would all get together with the spouses. Everybody would get to know each other, became very close-knit, and we take care of each other. I don't ask personal details about our team's lives, but if they volunteer something, for example, one of our teammates' spouses was going to have surgery, so we'd make sure we send a care package, make sure to check on how they're doing. And even when we were just a handful of us, we had kind of all our eggs in one basket, where we had a contract that our client lost just due to the nature of the beast. It was no fault of their own, but therefore we also lost that work. Our employees lost that work, and we had to find new business. We had so many people on that one contract. And I'll never forget, a couple of our teammates said that they wanted to help us find new business. They said, well, you can go to this industry event, but I can't pay you. I said, that's okay. You've treated us like family. It's time for us to return the favor. So they helped us to get back on our feet when they could have said, oh, I'm done. So
that's great commitment. I mean, if you were to kind of sum up the culture of your business, how would you describe it?
It would definitely be family.
Family oriented. Yeah.
And it's we all feel comfortable enough just to call anytime, text anytime, and we've got employees in 7 states.
How many? What's the total head count now for the team?
The total head count is 25. We've got 4 people in Arkansas, and the others from California, Colorado, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware. I don't know if I got them all or not, but
so you were ahead of the game on distributed team, even in advance of the pandemic, right? I mean, you had these specialists kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah, and the ones that could work remotely have been doing so. The ones that couldn't are working near areas where there's a SCIF.
Right.
Where there's a SCIF is Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. And I I actually was doing work, when we started this company, I was doing work as a systems engineer, and I had to be working in a skiff, so I had to travel back and forth to Maryland every week for 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that can take a toll.
And a lot of our audience is not going to know kind of what it's like to work in a skiff, so I'll give a description from the days in old, and you can tell me if it's close. So it's like being in a vault in a cave with white noise in the background. Is that pretty right?
Yes.
The view is not great.
Yeah. And if anyone needs to come in, there's red lights in the ceiling that come on. Yeah, we actually have some people on our team that, everybody has unique either ability or something. And some of these people, they had active clearances, but they just wanted to come back and help.
Right.
And so we needed security escorts.
Yeah.
So let's say that the room that we're in is a closed facility, classified facility.
Right.
There's no windows, but then the sink breaks. So you need a plumber to come in. You're not going to clear the plumber. You're not going to give the plumber a clearance. So you need a cleared escort to walk that person through and make sure that they do only what they're supposed to do and don't get into anything. It was an interesting day when I had to go to my general liability insurance broker and describe this, and he said, "You want me to insure an escort service?" It took a while. Okay, I get it.
Second
Yeah,
seating.
I was traveling back and forth for 4 years. I grew up here in Arkansas. I got my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering, moved to Maryland to work with a defense contractor, got an MBA at the University of Maryland, and I was just very content. I was a systems engineer where we would take, interpret the government's needs, kind of formulate that into a system, and develop the subsystem, the box, the electronics, the boards, the chips, and then integrate it all the way back up on the other side. Loved that job, and then life happened, and I needed to move back here to my home state of Arkansas to be near family. And I told my company, "Hey, I'm just letting you know I'm going to be looking for a job there," and they were very supportive. Couldn't ask for a better group of people. And I started to do that, travel back and forth, and it may or may not come as a surprise, but classified space payload systems for space payloads are not very common in central Arkansas. So what became, a short term became like 6 months and a year, and my wife and I said, we don't want to do this traveling thing our whole lives, but we were in the rhythm of it, so we decided to just embrace it, and we formed our own company and became W-2 employees of that company. And we were content, and we found a solution that worked for our family. And I don't think that we really knew what we were doing was a niche solution until somebody asked us later, "Hey, are you hiring?" Because previously there were only those two options, if someone wanted to come back, and the way we had structured it was this business to business contract for time and materials, work hourly, and that fit with retirees great. Sure. Because they work hourly, they work when they want to work, and we have a conversation with the client to say, "Hey, this is their retirement," and we are very supportive of them wanting to work only the projects that they want to, because otherwise they'll walk. They're coming back for a reason. They're coming back because they want to. So we want to make it a good experience for them. We want to make it. We want to treat them like family, and we found that if you let the team have that autonomy, that flexibility, that the respect to work on what they want to, then they will, in turn, represent you very well to the clients.
Sure.
So we, do you put customers first or employees first? I shouldn't say one way or the other, but we put employees first.
Yeah, Richard Branson, the Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records, all Virgin Galactic, he would say you put the team first, and they'll take care of the employees. And Fred Smith from FedEx is exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Take care of the team, and they will, by extension, take care of the customer.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. That's what we found too. Yeah, and it's been a unique experience. We've really we've gotten to a point where we're at 25 people now, and that has kind of plateaued. Mm-hmm. We always have this pipeline of more people are retiring, and some people after 3 or 4 years, okay, I'm done.
Yeah,
they're retiring for good. And we wanted to see, okay, how do we take that to the next step? And we were just accepted into the 10X Growth Accelerator from the conductor.
Fantastic.
And that is
great program.
That's our goal, is to switch from that linear growth that kind of plateaued to the exponential growth. We have so much experience in the aerospace and defense area, but aerospace and defense is not the only industry that's suffering from these, the silver tsunami and the great resignation. So we really want to branch out so that we're not in that scenario again where we have too many eggs in one basket. We want to branch out, and we'd like to do it at least starting in our home state of Arkansas, because with the exception of the 4 people that are here, everybody's out of state. Mm-hmm. So we're creating these jobs, but we're creating them out of state. And if we're going to create jobs, why can't we do that here as well?
That's actually the good crystal ball question. I mean, it's a lead into the crystal ball question: is what does winning look like in the next 3 to 5 years? And it sounds like you're saying, take the model that's worked in aerospace and defense and classified stuff and replicate that in other industry segments.
Yes, and I think we've kind of gone through the crucible of starting with the harder part first.
Yeah.
Because everything from accounting rules that have to be compliant with the Defense Contract Audit Agency, DCAA, and then the cybersecurity rules that are not just do the right thing, but there's 114, I forget how many rules that you have to implement.
Lots of ways to go to jail.
Lots of ways to go to jail. So if we've gone through the hardest parts,
right,
then going through the commercial side, I'm hoping has to be a little easier to replicate, and that's what we're hoping to do with the accelerator is to switch to that.
I mean, there's no reason to think that you couldn't take all that rigor that's associated with defense agency related stuff and apply that to, well, why couldn't we work with Fortune 100? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't we work with the large enterprises that are in the state that have their own rigor? I mean, it's a different jargon, but it's still jargon and process, and it makes rational sense to me. It's a good hypothesis that I know you'll test during the growth accelerator.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
I'd be interested to hear, what, just anecdotally, what are some of the most interesting roles that you've filled?
That you can talk about.
Yeah, you can talk about.
I think my favorite was a gentleman by the name of Phil Limbo, who our government customer referred to him as a national treasure. And he was the person who trained, I'm thinking of what I can say, who trained the people working at a particular government entity on how to interpret intelligence products. Mm-hmm. So this is a tank. This is a school bus.
Gotcha.
And he did the training for the government. And he is one that came out of retirement who, he wasn't going back to his previous employer. He was just sought after by everyone. Just the sweetest gentleman. But yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That's a goal right there, to be referred to as a national treasure.
Yes,
Just like
yes.
put that on your bucket list. He's just got to help Nicolas Cage steal the Declaration or something along the way. That's cool. I'm also curious what your airline miles look like.
Yes. Well, I accumulated a lot of airline miles, but I was also spending them as I went, because if I got enough to buy the next week's flight, I would just do that rather than spend the money on it. But I did buy a few things that I wouldn't normally have just paid cash for, like drone. That is a particularly favorite toy that I wouldn't have paid that kind of money for it. But if it's just airline miles, it's not real money.
Yeah. That's great. You got anything else, Victoria? I'm looking at you.
I know. I feel like all my questions were covered. Sorry, Jacob or Isaac, whoever's editing this.
We're kind of at that place where we land the plane or the classified drone, whatever the case may be, the aerial vehicle that shall be unnamed. When you think to all the accumulated experience over the years, if you were to roll the clock back 10 years and you could go back in time and you could give your younger self some advice, what advice would that be?
It would be advice that I got about 10 years ago that I wish I had known from the very beginning. And that was a mentor of mine and I were trying to solve a particularly difficult engineering problem. And he said, "Don't tell me it can't be done. Tell me, what would it take to make it happen?" And that was just the light bulb moment for me when I started to think of things differently, to think of things like, how many of these limitations that I have are just perceived limitations? And even the ones that are real, how would you construct a solution if that wasn't an issue? Because, that's when you start to have more creative solutions. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons that our model works, because we're not your typical company that's going to be a direct placement agency where we find someone and then they're going to work either after a certain period of time or not to become that client's employee. Everybody that joins us is our employee, and we cover their benefits and we make sure that they're taken care of, and if they work however much they want to work, if when they're done with one project, they might go support another client, because they're experts in their fields. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah, it's cool. As I was just kind of imagining or musing on what your tagline could be, it reminds me of that Liam Neeson movie called Taken.
Yeah.
Where he's talking to the bad guys.
I have a particular set of skills.
I have a particular set of skills. And it strikes me that that's really what you guys are, right? You attract in the people that are highly specialized, that are at interesting points in their career. Yeah. And that kind of a boutique play is really hard to replicate. It's not commoditizable. You can't. It's something that I think can take you a long way. And we're excited to be a small part of your journey, both through the 10X and having you on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Where can our listeners, the ones that are authorized and cleared, of course, find out more about what you do?
Well, our website is gentryservices.com, and we are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter with the handle of Gentry Pros, Pros. And we're located in downtown Little Rock at the Little Rock Technology Park.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors, if you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.